Codex Necrons, 3rd edition. Pages 52 and 53. Written by Graham McNeill. Narrated by R.J. Bailey.
Heavy destroyers on the right flank! Enemy troops sighted ahead!
The warnings came not a second too soon, and Marshal Augustine braced himself against the inner wall of the righteous Crusader as a massive detonation rocked the Black Templar Land Raider, tilting its 80-ton bulk up on one track. The mighty vehicle slammed back down, shattering the stone road of the Triumphal Way, and Augustine wrenched down the ramp lever, lest the armored vehicle become their tomb. He charged from the belly of the Land Raider into the smoke-filled hell surrounding the burning Basilica of St. Capelline, drawing his power sword and bolt pistol. From all around them, the gleaming skeletal warriors that so plagued this world were pouring from the ruined buildings either side of them. Ahead, the divine penance billowed smoke from its ruptured sides, its red-lit hull blocking the rubble-choked roadway. A living carpet of scuttling, silver beetle-like creatures boiled from the grates and cracks in the roadway, swarming over the flanks of the Land Raider. Sickly green coils of energy flickered around their claws as they flooded the tank's interior, and Augustine knew that the vehicle was doomed. The Black Templars spread out, firing on the soulless mechanical warriors before them. Several were blasted from their feet, only to rise once more as their hateful bodies reformed. Beside him, Tech Marine Prepolo jerked, caught in the flux of energy from one of the warriors' guns. Augustine could hear his agony over the Voxnet as the Tech Marine was flayed alive, layer by layer.
"For the Emperor!"
bellowed Augustine, charging towards an advancing group of silver warriors and cutting them down with great sweeps of his power sword. He smote the loathsome beings, sick to his very soul that such abominations had desecrated this world of the immortal Emperor. He hacked his last opponent to the ground, kicking its shattered body from the blade of his sword, and turned as a lance of jade light speared through the righteous Crusader. The mighty war vehicle exploded in a vast orange fireball, its engine and ammunition detonating and flipping it over onto its side. Augustine roared in anger, catching sight of a tall figure, its metallic sheen partially obscured by grave dirt-encrusted robes, carrying a long staff, its barbed end wreathed in coruscating emerald fire. As he watched, the creature slashed with its weapon, shearing Brother Navarre in two and severing Apothecary Lentis's arm from his body in a spray of crimson. The apothecary collapsed, first his armor, then his flesh, disintegrating from his skeleton in a matter of seconds. Augustine snarled and moved to intercept the robed Necron lord as it slew another of his warriors. Dozens of the beetle-like creatures swarmed around him, biting and stinging. He stamped hard on their bodies, crushing them beneath his armored boot as a whipping barbed tail lashed out, ensnaring his sword arm and pulling him off balance. Crackling blades slashed across his breastplate, scoring deep gouges. Augustine wrenched his arm free, turning to face his attacker. Two wraith creatures, their spines curved and ridged, floated before him, leering skull faces wedged between hunched shoulders, from which whipped slender arms bearing scalpel talons and a nightmare assortment of hooked lashes. They had no legs, merely elongated spinal blade tails, darting back and forth as they swirled around him. Augustine ducked a flurry of slashing blades, stabbing with his power sword at the belly of one of the creatures. The blade sliced through the beast's body, sliding clear with no resistance. But Augustine was amazed as the beast shrugged off the blow, uninjured by his killing thrust. The second wraith spun behind him, its tail lashing around his legs as its hooked fingers clawed at his armor. He hammered his elbow into its head, stumbling as again his blow passed clear through the monster's body. Was he fighting ghosts? Quick to press their advantage, the wraiths attacked again, their blades, claws, and barbed tails slashing through his armor and ribboning the flesh beneath. He brought his sword around in a crushing arc, and this time his blade hit home, smashing one of the abominations to shards. He felt hot pain sear his legs as dozens of the insectile creatures climbed his body, each stabbing into his legs again and again. His warriors were dying all around him, and he could see yet more of the Necron skimmers flying in to strafe those few who had broken through the ambush's trap. Augustine felt the wraith's tail whip around his waist as its body slammed into him from behind, driving him to his knees. He struggled to rise, the smaller beasts weighing down his arms with their numbers. Augustine roared in anger as the shadow of the wraith's claws rose above him before hammering down into his chest. The long blades punched through his armor, tearing into his hearts and lungs and ripping outwards. Augustine fought for a breath that would not come as his hardened ribcage cracked open and he toppled forwards, his face slamming into the roadway. His last sight was of his remaining warriors being cut down in the roaring firelight of the burning cathedral. You have been listening to Codex Necrons, 3rd edition, pages 52 and 53, written by Graham McNeill, narrated by R.J. Bailey. Thank you to Graham McNeill for writing this, and for helping attribute the right authors to their individual stories. This production, like all of Codex, is entirely unofficial and uncommercial. From an out-of-print publication, is a derivative work with all copyrights owned by Games Workshop, and is a celebration of the hobby and lore I grew up with. If you have suggestions for other old Codex fiction for me to narrate on this channel, you can comment or contact me on Twitter at RJ Bailey. Links are in the show description. You can and should follow Graham McNeill on Twitter at Graham McNeill, and you can find his website at grahammcneil.com.